All right, guys, so now we're going to get into high order array methods. In this particular video, we're going to look at for each, but there's a lot of these that can do different things. Now, they all work in a similar way in that they take in a function as an argument, which this is called a callback function. And in that callback function, we can pass in a variable for each element in that array or each item in that array. Now, what a for each does is it just simply loops through. It doesn't return anything. It just loops through as if we were using a for or a for of loop to just go through the array and do something specific. All right, so let's go ahead and jump in here. And we just want to create an array of some sort. I'm going to call this socials, and I'm just going to have a bunch of strings in here. So Twitter, let's say LinkedIn, let's do Facebook, and let's do Instagram. All right, so we just have an array of strings, and this could be an array of anything. And before I show you the for each, I just want to console log here socials and then the prototype chain, which is _proto _. And I think I showed you this back when we looked at some of the simple methods like push and pop. So you can see that those are here as well. So any methods or properties like length on the array are going to get shown here. And you can see we have for each right here. We have map, filter, find, reduce. These are all high order array methods, and they work in a similar way. So basically, let's go ahead and comment that out for now. Basically, what happens is we call the method, so in this case, for each, and then that method is going to take in a callback function, okay, an anonymous function. It's not going to be named, and we can do that in a few different ways. We could just use the standard function syntax, and then what gets passed in here, if we look at this documentation page here, what gets passed in, you can call it element like they did here, but you can call it anything. It just represents each item in the array. Okay, so here we just have ABC. For us, we have these strings here. So you can call it, I mean, a common thing I'll do is call it the singular version of the array, or I'll call it item. I don't usually use element, but again, you can call it whatever you want. And then you have access to that in here. So we can do console log item. Okay, so this function right here that we pass in is going to get run for every element or every item that we have in the array. So in this case, it's going to get run 4 times. And what we're doing is just logging it to the console. So if I save that and we take a look, we should see these in the console. All right, and if you want to kind of slow it down a little bit, you could go to sources and go to script. Okay, we looked at this debugger back when we looked at execution context and the call stack. But what I'm going to do is put a breakpoint right here on the for each, and then I'm going to reload the page. Okay, so nothing is run yet, but if I come down here to the step arrow and I hit that, and then it's going to go into the function, we're going to run the for each, run the console log, and now we get Twitter. Okay, if I go back again, it's going to run console log again because there's another item in the array. Again, Facebook, again, Instagram, and then it's going to end because there's no more items in the array. Okay, so that's kind of a step-by-step of what's happening. Let me just want to remove that breakpoint there. All right, and then we'll go back into the console. Now, like I said, you could pass in a function this way, or let's actually comment that out. Or you could, first of all, get rid of the function keyword and then add on our arrow. So this is valid, but since it's just a one-line expression, we can actually take away the curly braces as well. If I save that, we get the same thing. Now, in addition to the item that we pass into the callback, there are some other arguments that we can pass in. So I just want to go back here and we'll come down. So these are the parameters, right? We have our callback function, and then in that callback function, we have the item or element. But in addition to that, we can also pass in the index of the current element being processed in the array. And of course, it's going to start at 0. The array, so we can also get the entire array. There might be times where you need that within your function. So let's go ahead and pass in the index, and then we'll pass in the entire array. So those are the additional parameters. So here what I'll do is I'll console log. Let's just put in some backticks here, and of course we need to wrap the item in that. And then let's also do, before it, we'll do the index and then slash. So we'll say index dash and then the item dash, not a slash. And then if we look here, you can see the index starts at 0 and then increments. And then let's pass in, after the backtick here, we'll just pass in the entire array. So you can see that you have access to that as well. Now you can also pass in a named function rather than an anonymous callback. So for example, let's create a function called log socials, and that's going to take in an item, or we can just say like social, and then we just want to console log social. So we want this function to run for every item that's in the array. So what we can do is just take socials, call for each, and then simply pass in log socials. All right, if I save that, let's just comment this one out. If I save that, you'll see it's going to log all the social items here. Now, when you pass this in, you don't want to execute it, right? You don't want to pass in the parentheses. You want to just pass in the definition of the function, just like you do here. You know, you don't execute this function here. It's a callback. Now, the last thing I want to show you is with objects, because usually when you use for each, it's usually on an array of objects. So let's say social objects, and we'll set that to an array. And each object will have, let's say, a name, say Twitter, and a URL, say https twitter.com. And then what we'll do is copy this down a couple times, and let's change this one to Facebook. And what else? LinkedIn and Instagram. All right, and you can have, I think I mentioned this before, but you can have trailing commas in your arrays. In fact, if I save, Prettier automatically keeps the trailing comma. So I want to comment this one out, and then I want to log each item here. So let's say social objects, and then dot for each, and then we're going to pass in our function, which is, we'll say item, and then let's just do a console log of that item. So in this case, it's going to give us objects, right? Each item in the array is a social object. So if we want to access a specific property, we would do item dot and then whatever, let's say URL. So now it will give us all the URLs. And then of course we could do whatever we want to that array. And we'll be using for each a lot more. But in the next video, I want to show you an example of another high order array method called filter.